Everybody wants James Brown.
Well, you know, James Brown is you. James Brown is you out there. I didn't make James Brown. Thank God that he gave me the energy to carry out the role. But I was just playing a part for humanity. I'm a doctor on your soul while you get your head together.
Good God, ladies and gentlemen, it is Trey here, and today at Reactions to the Classics, we're going to be talking about the hardest working man in show business, the godfather of soul, soul brother #1, Mr. Dynamite, whatever you want to call him. James Brown is one of the most legendary, influential, and greatest artists in American music history. I went ahead, listened to all 59 of his studio albums in the last few weeks in preparation of this video, and what a fun journey it was. I'm gonna be letting you know 10 things I learned as I went through it at the end as well, giving my 10 favorite James Brown tracks and records. But before we get to that, I'm going to give you just an overview of the man himself. If you don't know, his accolades are so vast, it's tough to just pinpoint it down into something brief, but hey, I'm gonna give it a shot right here. In addition to being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's inaugural 10-person class back in 1986, he's also in the R&B Hall of Fame, as well as the Songwriters Hall of Fame. He has 17 #1 hits on the Billboard R&B chart, which was a record for quite some time, for many, many decades. A little bit of history about James Brown, okay? Going all the way back, he was born and raised in poverty. Age 11 onwards, though, he started having success in local talent shows, learned to play the piano, guitar, and harmonica in childhood. 16, he got arrested, sent to juvie for stealing, and it was at this time he started to get the nickname Music Box. So it's always interesting whenever you look back at the history of these legends to see, even from a young age, that that talent could not help but be brought forth no matter what environment they were in. He left prison and then shortly after joined Bobby Byrd's vocal group, the Famous Flames, in 1954. Started playing with them, but James was just too good, man. He started to go from behind the kit as a drummer to being the front man right here, and wrote a song by the name of Please, 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 which became the Famous Flames' first big hit right there, and really kind of showcased that sheer talent that James Brown possessed. Shortly thereafter, the group was renamed James Brown and his Famous Flames, and then they signed to King Records. They had a lot of success on those R&B charts in the early years, and James himself actually financed a live recording of the group at the Apollo in New York, and that really broke them into the mainstream as the LP charted at #2 in 1963, and even to this day, it's acclaimed as one of the greatest live albums of all time. If you've never given it a spin, it's barely over 30 minutes long, but you really can hear the talent and charisma of James Brown through this live at the Apollo recording. 1965, he recorded the hit Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, which won him his first Grammy and was a top 10 hit on the pop charts as well, and continued to top the R&B charts in the coming years, and then became a solo artist without the Famous Flames. Into the late 60s, his sound shifted from this R&B soul sound into funk, the notable recording being Cold Sweat and Give It Up or Turn It Loose, as continued to grow his stature both in the States, and James Brown really famous over in Europe as well, sell out all the concerts that he would do over there. In this time, he started building his business empire, bought a lot of radio stations throughout the country, and his influence started to grow worldwide. Fast forward now that we hit the 70s, it came and he formed a new band called the JBs. This notably featured the great Bootsy Collins on bass and his brother Catfish Collins on guitar. And though they were only together until 1971, until they were kicked out for drugs, and they went to go help form Parliament Funkadelic. Man, James and this crew were just so funky, and whenever you think of that James Brown funk sound, you're probably thinking of some of the recordings that the JBs did, such as Get Up, I Feel Like Being a Sex Machine. In this time, Brown continued to expand the funk genre, signed with Polydor Records in 1971, and continued to have big hits like The Payback and Get Up Off of That Thing through the mid-70s. He had a bit of a decline in commercial success as the 70s waned and had some financial issues. He changed the name of the group, the JBs, to the Soul Generals, which he kept until his death. In the 80s, he had a resurgence of sorts. He appeared famously in films Rocky IV, which, as I'm thinking back at it, that might have been my first experience of James Brown in that movie, and of course Living in America, which became a top 10 hit. Continued to release music throughout the 90s. His final record was actually in the year 2002 called The Next Step. He was still ever the entertainer and live performer until his death in 2006 at the age of 73 from heart failure. So there's so much to say about the man. I would really suggest watching the wonderful biopic that the late great Chadwick Boseman starred called Get On Up. That also gives you a bit of an overview of the man as well. But here is 10 things I learned going through James Brown's discography. A man whose first record was released in the late 50s, and then last one, like I said, in 2002. It was so interesting to hear the shift in styles and sounds that he went through, and yet through it all, I never got bored going through this, and it was quite quality throughout his entire catalog up until maybe the last, 8 to 10 records or so once, we hit the late 80s, 90s period. Everything up to that was at the very least listenable, and then you had just some stone cold classics thrown in there as well. So 10 things I learned, let's get it, y'all, and 10 things that impressed me and showed me the talent that James Brown had. First, he was elite in so many different types of styles and genres of music, whether we're talking his early years of where he was more in that R&B style with the famous Flames, such as his records Try Me and Please Please Please. Of course, soul with Prisoner of Love, which is one of my favorite records he did, and James Brown Sings Raw Soul. And then obviously funk, which he really helped birth and expand into the musical consciousness with his record Sex Machine, Get Up Off of That Thing, I Can't Stand Myself, When You Touch Me, just to name a few. So James Brown not only able to pull off one style of music, but many. Second thing I learned, his voice could pull off not only these energetic tracks, such as the aforementioned Get Up Off of That Thing, Sex Machine, Hot Pants, Get on the Good Foot, but ballads as well, especially early on in his career with the famous Flames and, up to that kind of mid-60s period. I really enjoyed Try Me and obviously his monster hit, It's a Man's World. He also came out with a couple records where he covered some Frank Sinatra and some classic crooners and sang in that style. So it's really interesting to hear the fact that he can pull off so many different types of sounds, and he really is one of my favorite vocalists now, just for the variety that he can sing, as well as some of those ad-libs, the good God, the charisma that also comes forth into play. Another thing that I learned from here is just the ability that James had as a band leader and as somebody that is kind of orchestrating it all with his backing band, right? From the legendary famous Flames with Bobby Byrd and company to the JBs, as I mentioned, with Bootsy and Catfish Collins, and the great John Starks on drums with these grooves, of course, are so notable in his funk period, and that wouldn't be there without John Starks on the drums laying it down and bringing some of that funkiness in there. And James is able to just blend his voice into whatever his band had in store, and I think that is something that is quite notable. Another thing, his charisma and star power, y'all, are just off the charts. As I mentioned before, loved his ad-libs just throughout his entire catalog, and that translated to a really fun listening experience, even decades after the fact. That's how you know that legends are true legends. He's not only great in his time, I can only imagine going to a JB concert or putting on some of these LPs at the time they were released and just being transported to that world of funkiness and greatness that James Brown had. And here, as I'm sitting recording this in 2023, it holds up today. Another thing I learned is that he recorded numerous instrumental records actually for Smash Records after some disputes he had with King Records in the 60s, and he stepped behind the organ there. Not that he's some knockdown great all-time organ player, but that's just something I hadn't known, and that's some of these little things you learn going through somebody's discography in chronological order, picking up stuff that isn't their most famous records. You get to pull out the tidbits here and there. My favorite instrumental record that he came out with was in 1969, The Popcorn, which he actually recorded for King, and that really just showed you the great funky funky grooves. And I would suggest that if you're looking for some great James Brown instrumental stuff. Another thing I learned is that this man loved Christmas, okay? He came out with 4 Christmas records, even up to the point of his death. His second to last record in 1999 was called the Merry Christmas Album. And, it's, I think, reflective of the music business in that time as well, going back to, that early 60s period where, there were years, y'all, where he would come out with 3-4 records in a calendar year, which obviously is just not really seen today, especially from an artist of JB's stature. And that kind of goes into the next point I learned. A lot of these records that he had in that early 60s period were named after the hit single. So I think that's, again, just a sign of the time in the industry right there. From Please, Please, Please to Out of Sight, Cold Sweat, I Got the Feeling, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. All great singles, and yet the record companies would just package that up and fill it up with some other tunes. Sometimes there you'd hear the same song on 3-4 different records as a part of filler, in a sense, and that was something that stuck out to me as well, going through the journey. And hey, man, anything the record companies could do to pump out some more numbers, they were doing back in the day. Another thing I learned, as good as he was in the studio, and boy, was he great, he was even made more for a live audience. Of course, you have the Live at the Apollo record back in 1963, and you have to go listen to that. That's the one that gets all the shine. But my favorite live recording, and probably my favorite recording overall in this journey for me, was his 1971 performance in Paris, the only live recording with the JBs that he had. It's a Love, Peace, Power, live at the Olympia, Paris, 1971. If I'm gonna take one JB recording from his entire discography, I'm probably taking this one, over an hour long, of James Brown at his best, at his funkiest, performing all the hits. And go and listen to this record, ladies and gentlemen. One other thing I learned is that, man, he really is one of the most influential musicians in music history, right? Soul, funk, hip hop, dance music all owe him a debt in a major way. He was a favorite of everyone from Michael Jackson and Prince to Sly and the Family Stone, Funkadelic, David Ruffin of the Temptations was a big fan, to the early hip-hop legends like MC Hammer, Big Daddy Kane, and another little trivia note, he is the most sampled artist of all time. Over 8,500 samples of his music throughout the years that are documented, quite a bit more than Who's Number 2. And again, just goes to show that James Brown was almost a genre in and of itself. And the final thing I learned is that I knew he was great, coming in. Like I said, I didn't really know that many James Brown songs besides the big hits. But after this journey, he's better than I even envisioned or imagined. And I feel, in a certain sense, he's almost underrated here today in 2023. Thinking, okay, is he overrated, properly rated, underrated? And that's something that I'm going to be kind of looking back to as I go forth in this series of listening to the catalogs and feeling what I learned. And yeah, I honestly feel he's underrated, even though he has all these accolades. I just feel his name isn't maybe brought up as much in current musical discourse. Of course, I know he's been gone now for nearly 20 years, and his heyday was so far in the past, and yet, man, he is just such a legend, a total package, is not only a songwriter, but a singer, band leader, and of course, a performer. So that's going to take us now to my top 10 songs in no particular order. I'm going to be going with It's a Man's World, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, Please, 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 Sex Machine, I Got the Feeling, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, The Boss, Get Up Off of That Thing, Give It Up or Turn It Loose, and Try Me. And I know, again, a lot of those are just some of the biggest hits, and it was just so tough for me to whittle down to just 10 songs. Be sure to check out, I'll link a playlist from Spotify with 40 of his songs through the years to kind of give you a taste of some of the other songs that maybe are a bit more under the radar that aren't going to be on the greatest hits compilations like Star Time, which is a great one in its own right. But yeah, you can go check that out, give it a listen. And then my favorite records. okay? Coming from 10 to 1, I have It's a New Day, Let a Man Come In. A lot of these are going to be coming from that 70s funk period, because that's just my favorite period of James Brown. Really anything, like I said, from his first record, Please, 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 up to, kind of that mid 80s period is, strong to, just absolutely fantastic. Number 9, we're going to go with Hell, again, coming around in this mid 70s period, really finding that funkiness groove. I also really enjoyed Get On the Good Foot. It's not only fun to say, but it's a great track and great record. Then we're going to take it way on back to Think, which has a horrendous album cover, kind of striking with that baby, but hey, it is a fantastic album and a showcase of the great, kind of laid back R&B style that James Brown kind of came up with. There It Is going to be coming in next, and then I Can't Stand Myself, When You Touch Me coming up next. The Payback, I think you can even make an argument, it's a top 3, or I know some people even have it as the best James Brown studio record. The title track is one of his best songs as well, that hurt me to leave off of the top 10 tracks. Number 3, we have Please, 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 that debut record, which is helped by the fact that a lot of the great singles, such as Please, 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 were on here. But again, with a lot of these early records, y'all, they're around 30 minutes long. They fly by, and they're just filled with quality from top to bottom, and quality musicianship, great singing by James Brown. Number 2, I gotta go Sex Machine right here, about an hour long. We have some studio overdubs to make it sound like it's a live audience, though a lot of the record isn't actually in front of a live audience. So again, some of those studio tricks that they used back in the day. Of course, the title track clocks in at 12 minutes, and it's just one of the greatest grooves you're ever gonna hear. And my number 1 record is actually gonna be the album Get Up Off of That Thing. Not only is the title track one of the most legendary James Brown songs, but the entire record is just chock full of greatness from start to finish. And again, I believe it's 6 songs, and every song is an absolute banger. And so for that, it gets my nod as the best James Brown studio record. But that will do it on our James Brown history lesson today. If you enjoyed this video, y'all, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to be looking to do more videos like this, and I'm actually going to put up a poll on Patreon with 3 artists that I'm going to be looking at doing next. So if you're a patron, go over, make sure you vote, and then whatever is at the top after a couple of days is what discography I'm going to be going through next. And again, kind of doing this 10 things I learned type of series and video, along with a list of top 10 songs and records. And of course, I want to hear from you all down below. What are your thoughts on James Brown in general, as well as your favorite songs, your favorite records? It's always fun to get that discourse started and talking about, and I'm looking forward to doing more in the series, and I'm glad I kicked it off with James Brown, someone who is just so legendary, needed a history lesson on, and now I'm so glad that I did. As I noted, y'all, check out that Spotify link as well, and all our social medias. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Discord, Facebook, all that good stuff. And I am looking forward to what this series has in store next. So until next time, thanks for watching, y'all. Happy listening, and I will see you